adding servers, WebSphere application servers into the cluster and starting cluster and deploying the applications. So these topics we will see today. You're able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to create a cluster. So go to the servers here and click on server type. Go to the application servers. Here I have only one server that is under node 1. Okay. So in the below you can see cluster tab. Expand this cluster tab and click on WebSphere application server cluster. Here we do not have any clusters as of now. I'm going to create a new one. Click on new. Here specify the cluster name. So I'm going to give the cluster name as cluster 1. Okay. And if you observe below two checkboxes, prefer local specific whether the enterprise being request will be routed on the node on the client reside response. That means so it is located in only one node. Okay, so I don't have another nodes. So actually the cluster means we can group the application servers which are running in the same node or different node. We can group the servers in the same node, or we can group the servers in the different node in the single physical machine, or we can group the servers are running in different machines also. So that is horizontal clustering. So horizontal clustering is not possible now because I don't have another mission. So as of now I am creating vertical cluster here. Here is the cluster name is cluster 1 and click on next. Here we have four options to create a cluster. So that is first is four radio buttons available. Okay, so select basic first of cluster member. That means first at least one web server should be there for creating the cluster. After that we can add members into that cluster. Okay, so here we have four options. First one is create a member using application server template. That means already we have one server that is called server 1. So using that server 1, already we have one server 1. Using that server 1, so we are going to create a members. So for that select 1, and the second radio button is create a member using existing application server template. Okay, so that means here I have only one server, so in the local node 1. Okay, so using this existing application server template we can configure cluster members. Okay, and the third one is create a member by converting the existing application server. Okay, so and fourth option is none, create an empty cluster. So here I am going to create using default and click on next. Here we have to specify the cluster name server 2, and the server 2 is under node 1. Click on next. Okay, now the member is added. Server 2 is added.
Rambabgar,
Okay.
your voice is breaking. I'm not sure it's only me or is Venkata, can you hear the voice clearly or is it breaking for you as well?
Sometimes.
Your voice is breaking.
Oh, is it now okay? Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Actually, the problem with my headset, it seems. I removed the headset. Now it is okay. So here I'm creating the server 3. Add member here. Click on add member. So I have two servers in the cluster. Okay, so two servers. If I want to add one more server, I can add. Okay, so that is up to our, okay, so that is our requirement. It depends on our requirement. We can add the servers in the cluster. Okay, so I have added 3 servers and click on next and then finish.
Your voice is breaking again.
Again, is it?
For me, it's okay.
Oh, for you it's okay.
Oh,
Maybe it's
I
mine.
think
Maybe.
you better to remove the headset and again
Okay.
plug in again.
Okay. I'll try different option. If it is good for him, please go ahead. I'll try
Yeah,
to
yeah,
figure
okay,
it out.
okay. And save the configuration of cluster. So now the cluster is created. Okay, so now it is in stopped state. So we have to start the cluster now. So for starting the cluster means we can start the servers, individual servers from here, or we can start the cluster from here also. Okay, so two ways we can start the cluster. First one is we can select the cluster and then start here, or otherwise go to the application servers, so we have server 2, server 3 and server 4 in the cluster. So we can start the servers individually, so both are same. Okay, I'm going to start this one. So before going to start the servers, we need to start the node agent first. So go to the node agent. Node agent is started. Now try to start the application servers from here. Okay, so if you start server 2, server 3 and server 4, then cluster will be start. Okay, otherwise we can start from here also. So both are same, but here in cluster there is options like start. So if you click on start, all the cluster members will initiate start at a time. Suppose here I have 3 servers in the cluster, server 3, server 2, server 3, server 4. So if I select this cluster, and click on start, all the cluster members will initiate start at a time. And if you click on stop, all the servers will stop at a time. And ripple start means the server 2 and server 3 and server 4 will start one by one. That is the difference between these three. Okay, starting is means every server will initiate start at a time. Okay, so parallelly all the cluster members will start. Stop means all the servers will stop. Ripple start means each and one server will start at a time. Okay, once the server 1 is started, the server 2 will be initiate for starting. Okay, and here immediate stop, that means the cluster we can stop immediately. Okay, here I am going to start individual servers. Server 2 I am going to start now. Start it. So cluster 2 is started. I am going to start the remaining 2 servers also. Click on start. That means the cluster will be start. So the remaining 2 servers also started. So total 3 servers in the cluster and the 3 servers are running. Now go and verify the cluster. If you observe here, cluster also started. So that means cluster start or cluster members starts both are same. Okay. So like this we can create number of clusters. I'm going to create another cluster, name is cluster 2, and click on next, and here add the members, click on next. Here I am adding server member 1. I am adding member 1 is nothing but WebSphere application server only. I just given the different name, that's it. Okay, so I am going to create member 2, add member. So in now in cluster 2 having 2 members, member 1 and member 2. Click on next and click on finish. Now the server 2 will be created.
Hey, Ram, suppose if I want
Yeah.
to create like on a cluster on other server, other physical server, where I want to add that one.
So we have to specify when we are going to create a cluster. It is showing drop down the nodes. I will show you. Click on next here.
Okay.
Suppose I am going to create a new cluster, cluster 3.
Okay.
Okay. So click on next. Here you can see the nodes. Okay. So remote server nodes also we can see here.
So without configuring anything, it will show there.
Yes, it will show. It will drop down the list all the available nodes here, so we can configure with that. Okay.
Means
No, even though it is not in this app server, still it will show all the remote servers as well.
Yeah, remote servers also we need to federate with this DMGR. Then that nodes also will be display here. So
Oh,
we
okay,
have to
okay.
select the nodes from here.
So only
Without
after
federation,
federation, only if it is federated to
yeah,
DMGR, then only we can see these. Okay.
yes, we can see. So without federation, there is no cluster also. This is centralized administration, right? So we have to federate the remote system nodes also here. Then you can able to see all the nodes, available nodes under this drop down list. So then we can create. Okay. So we have cluster 2 also. I'm going to start cluster 2. Select the cluster and then start. Member 1, member 2 will be start now. Okay, so it is showing partially started. That means the node is not synchronized properly. So we have to do that. Go to the system administration nodes. So synchronization happened successfully, but it is not started properly. Then go to the WebSphere application server. Now try to start the servers from here. Select the these two and then start.
Now, if you start from the cluster already, and if you come back here and start here again, it's okay.
Yeah, that is okay because whenever you start the cluster, sometimes it will not start properly the servers. Then we can start from here at the time.
So is there any way how to identify if the servers were started properly or not?
We can see here the status is green, and we can see the logs also.
But this green comes only after starting the server, but without even starting, how do we know it's running?
We can verify in the logs, server logs. Each
Server
and
log.
every server maintain logs. Then we can go to that path. Log files we will discuss in separate session. In the log file, every activity will be recorded. So there we can identify the issue with the server, why it is not starting, where we stuck. So everything we can find in the logs.
Okay.
Yeah, we will see that log file session also in future.
Sure, sure. But I didn't get how you thought the servers did not start properly because it said partial start.
Hmm.
That indicates that servers did not start properly.
Yeah, that servers not started properly.
Oh, I thought whenever
That
you click,
means
it automatically
server,
gives the
yeah,
initial.
that means servers are not loading the objects and classes properly. So at the time we have to start manually from this window.
From this window. Okay. So there are so many options available on the left panel. Um, so which one are the mostly used ones on the left panel?
Here we use cluster
Okay.
and proxy cluster. See, these are all the features under cluster. So as per our requirement, we will use these all the things.
All the things.
Okay. So here, if you observe WebSphere application server cluster, this means normal clusters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the second option is proxy server cluster. That means the servers which are in the cluster acts as a proxy. Okay, it acts as a, that is WebSphere application server only, but the servers acts as a proxy server. Proxy server means take the request from the client, take the request from the client and route the request to the application servers. So that servers will act as a proxy. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if you go to the cluster topology, here you can see all the clusters information. And here dynamic cluster means here I am starting and stopping the services manually. Okay, so in real time, if you configure dynamic cluster, depends on requirement, depends on criticality of the application. It will stop the servers, it will start the servers. Suppose the load is very high, suppose I have 10 servers in the cluster. Okay, so the application is running on the cluster, so the application having minimum request. At the time, the dynamic cluster itself stops some servers, it stops 3 or 4 servers. It will automatically shut down 3 servers, and it will survive the request with the remaining servers. Suppose if the request is very high, if the critical application requests are coming very frequently, or lots of requests, then it will start the servers automatically. So for that we used to configure dynamic cluster. But nowadays no one using this dynamic cluster, because we have some bugs and issues with the dynamic cluster. So we are going with only WebSphere application server cluster here.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
this is the way we can create the cluster, and we can add the servers members into the cluster and starting. Okay, so all the servers are started in cluster 1 and cluster 2. Okay, now we have some options in the cluster, so that is some tabs available. First one is new is creating the new cluster. Deleting the existing cluster. Starting the cluster. So if you click on select the cluster and then click on start, all the cluster members will start at a time. That means all the servers will initiate this for starting parallelly. Okay, and if you click on stop, all the servers will be stopped in the cluster. Okay, and here ripple start means the servers, the cluster members will start one by one. Okay, so if you click on start, it will start parallelly at a time. Ripple start means it will start one by one. Suppose I have 3 servers, server 1 will start first. So until unless the server starts, server 2 will not initiate for the starting. Okay, server 2 will start once the server 1 is up. So like that the ripple start will work. And immediate stop means thus we can stop the clusters immediately. Okay, here I am stopping the cluster. Okay, so cluster servers are going down, it is under process, that's why it is showing. So now it is stopped. Okay, cluster 2 is stopped. Now go and verify the application servers, and cluster 2 is stopped, that's why member 1 and member 2 also stopped state. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
now we will deploy one application in cluster 1, and let us see the features like load balancing, scalability, and high availability we will see. So to
I
verify
have a
those
question.
features,
I have a question.
yeah,
So when the servers are running and the cluster is running, can we add and remove the servers from the cluster, or do we have to stop the cluster and do it?
we have to stop the particular server and then remove.
Oh, while the cluster is running, we can stop one server and remove that server alone without impacting the
Yes,
cluster
yes. Yes. So
and adding
here I have, yes, individual servers we can stop and start, and we can remove also
and
from the
adding
cluster.
adding
Adding also we can do.
while the
Adding
server
also.
is while the cluster is running, we can add a server.
But
Can
we are adding new server. There is no impact on cluster.
adding a new
Okay.
server and configure that to the cluster, no impact.
Yes. Yes. No impact. No impact.
So once the server is
Uh,
up and running, the cluster will take care of that.
Yes, correct.
The load balancing and other stuff. Okay.
Yes. So because cluster is logical boundary. Suppose if I want to move this member 1 to cluster 1, okay, so that member 1 will be removed from here and it will be added here, because cluster is logical boundary. We cannot maintain the same server in the two clusters. Okay,
Okay.
so that is not possible. So
So
cluster
we
member means it in one cluster.
so we have to stop in cluster 2. We have to stop the server first and then add that server into cluster 1 and then start the server there.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Steps. Okay.
Okay. So now cluster have three features: high availability, load balancing, and scalable. So we will check these three. Scalability means we can add and remove the servers from the cluster. That is very simple. Suppose if I want to add one more member in the cluster, I can add. Okay. So I am going to add one more cluster, one more server like member 3. Click on next, 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 and finish. Save the master configuration. Member 3 is created. So I have to add member 3 in the cluster 2. Okay. So go to this member 3. Here go to the cluster. I think we cannot add like that. Go to the cluster 2. Cluster 2 already stopped, and here cluster members. Okay. So click on detail here, details, and sorry, I think we cannot add one moment. So we cannot add like that. So go to the clusters and cluster 2. Add the member here and add. Okay, and come down. So member 3 added in the cluster. Click on next and finish.
That member 3 server is already created, right?
Yeah, actually we cannot create, if you create the cluster, if you create the managed servers, suppose if you create the members here. So those servers we cannot add in the cluster. So we have to add the members in the cluster option itself. Okay. Now cluster member 3 is added into the cluster 2.
No, but
Okay.
see, when we started our training, we created servers, right? We created DMGR manager, we created managed servers, application servers, and
Mm-hmm.
servers.
Mm.
So clusters, when it's a logical grouping, when we are creating a cluster, we can select which servers to keep, which servers to remove into this logical grouping. Uh, but
Mm.
it cannot do that already created managed servers to add or delete. How can we? There should be a way, right, to do that.
It depends on requirement. Suppose the application is getting minimum requests, then we can keep 3 servers. So if we have more than expectation, then we can add one more server. So it depends on our requirement. We can add and remove. Okay.
Okay, I'm
So
little
just now I
confused.
have added.
Yeah, I'm confused here because with first we create a server, then we configure that to a cluster. But here
Yeah.
looks like we cannot create a server and then configure to a cluster. So it's not a.
Yes, yes. For existing servers, we can add into. So we have to create the members newly. We cannot add existing application servers in the cluster.
Okay.
Okay.
So when we want to add a new server, let's say, so it has to be done only through cluster. You cannot just add. You cannot go to the DMGR server and create an application server, and then under a node, and then you cannot do it, attach it to a cluster.
Yes, we cannot do that.
We
So we
cannot.
have go with the cluster. We cannot.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So scalability we have seen, and load balancing means there is load balancing depends on algorithm. We have some algorithms round robin, weight based, and random algorithms. So we will check those algorithms. So go to any of the cluster. I'm going to cluster 1. Okay. Here here go to this cluster member. Here we can see weight. Okay, weight means it is configured on weight based algorithm. Okay, so go to the click on details here. Here we can update weights. Okay, so here I can give 5. Okay, 5 I'm giving for these 3 servers. So we can modify the weights also here. Okay, click on update. So it will update. So like this we can give our weights here. Okay, and then here we cannot change the algorithm, because changing the algorithm means at the time of cluster creation we can change the algorithm. So this cluster is already created under weight based algorithm. So if you want round robin or uh, random algorithm, at the time of cluster creation we can select. So there is a drop down, so there we can select the round robin and where random also. Okay, and the next one is high availability. For checking the high availability we have to install the application. Okay, so go to that one, install one enterprise application in the cluster. Okay, so I'm going to install one application. Click on install. Browse the application calendar. I am going to install calendar.var. Click on next. This time I am going with fast path. Click on next, and here nothing to do, just click on next. Here we have to map the here we have to map the applications to the targets. So here I can see 3 targets. First target is server 1. This is individual application server, standalone application server, which is not grouped with cluster. Okay, and I have cluster 1 and cluster 2 also. I am going to map this one to the cluster 1 because the cluster 1 is running. So I am going to map this application to cluster 1. Select the cluster 1, click on apply. Okay, now next, 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 finish. Now the application is going. Save the file. Is done. Now try to application deployment is done. Start the application. Another calendar, check the logs of server to node more for more information. Go to the nodes and verify whether it is synchronized or not. So node 1 is synchronized properly, and then try to restart the servers. I'm restarting the services.
So here you don't have to give the node name once you execute the start node command?
Not required.
If there are multiple nodes?
If you start from start server.sh command, then we have to specify the server name, either node agent or server name or DMGR. So here we are giving directly node, then it will start node agent.
A node agent of that particular application server.
Yes, yes. So we are in that application server bin directory. So we are in app server, right? App server profile bin directory.
Okay. Okay.
Can execute. Now start the servers. Click on full synchronize. Node agent is started. So servers also started. Now go and verify the application whether it is started or not. We have to start manually. So server application is not started, then start the application. Application is started properly now. Okay, now try to access this application and check the high availability, failover. So for checking the high availability and failover, first we have to access this application through the 3 servers. We targeted to the cluster, right? So the cluster having 3 servers. So we have to access the same application with the 3 servers. So then after that we will stop one server and we will test it whether we are able to access or not, whether the application is running or not with with the another server. So go to the application servers. Now check the port number. Go to server 1. Here is the ports. For accessing the application, we use a port called default host. Okay, so WC web console default host port number. This port number is used for to access the application. Okay, now try to access the application. HTTP localhost and port number is 9081, and here we have to specify context root. So to verify the context root, go to that application. So here is the application. Go to this application. Here we can see the context root of this module. So click on this context root. Slash is the context root. So now here give the slash. Okay, this is the calendar. This is the application of calendar. Now try to access the same application with a different, the next server in the cluster. Go to the server 3 and port. Now the application is running on 2 servers and try to access with the third one. Eight three. So on the 3 servers, the application is running fine. Okay. So for checking the failover means if one server is down in the cluster, so the server will not able to provide the services to the application. So at that time, the next server will take the responsibility to handle the request. So for checking that, I'm stopping server 2. So now the server 2 is stopped. Okay, server 2 is stop state. Now try to access the application with the default port number of that server 2. Okay, so this is the server 2. So it is showing unable to connect, but it will be available on server and server 4. Okay, so if I try to stop server 3 also, so server 3 also stopped, and refresh this console. So the application is not available, but in the two servers, but in the third server it is available. So that means it is failover. So server 3 is taking the responsibility to handle the request. So even if the server 2 and server 3 is down. Okay, in troubleshooting point of view, we used to do like that. Suppose if any JVM fail in the cluster, okay, so the next, I mean the remaining servers will be live and it will serve the request. In meanwhile, we have to troubleshoot and start up the servers. Okay, this is called failover. Is it clear?
Yeah, I have a question. So let's say cluster has 4 servers or 3 servers, and when we are trying to deploy an application, one of the servers is down. So it will be deployed into the remaining servers, excluding that. So can we go back and deploy on that server once we issue the issue?
If the server is down also, application will deploy, because in real time in production environment, the recommended way is before going to deployment, we can stop the cluster and then do the deploy and startup. Okay, so if you do like that, you will not get any issues while deployment. Otherwise, deployment means we are loading the application into the server. At that time, if the servers are running in the cluster, the server will goes down while deploying the application, and we will get errors. Okay, so to overcome this problem, it is better to stop the servers in the cluster. So this is calendar is a sample application, that's why I did not stop the cluster, but in real time stop the services and deploy the application and start the services. Then the application will be start will be executed properly in the server.
But if you stop the services, the business will be impacted, right? These servers are supposed to be run 24/7, and to
Yeah,
deploy.
we will do the production deployments in non-business hours, and all the stockholders the client will approve, they will give you some downtime. So we will take the downtime and we will do the deployments. So that is
So
the recommended way. We need approvals, change requests, we need change request for the deployment, and we need approvals from the client for the downtime.
So
So when
definitely there will be a downtime to deploy any applications.
yes, definitely, yes, correct. So without downtime, we cannot do in deployments in production. So lower environments we can do because no one is testing. That is for testing purpose.
Right.
So we will do the deployments direct. But in production, it should be in weekends. Saturday and Sunday they will do in non-business hours, non-business days they will do, or they'll take if it is urgent change. urgent requirement, the client will provide a lot of approvals needed for the downtime. So we need to take the downtime from them and then do the deployments.
So if the
Most of the time we will do weekends only.
okay, so if we stop the servers on the cluster and we do the deployment, if they are stopped, how can they go and uh, deploy it into the
Application will deploy. See, let me try. Suppose I am trying to I am stopping these two servers also. Let me deploy one application. Let's see.
okay.
Now all the cluster members are stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Now I am going to deploy application. So let's check whether it is deployed or not. Come to application will deploy, but it will not be accessible because the server is down. So application deployment is different, services is different. Application should be deployed services and should be up and running. Apply and come down. Next, next, and finish. We can deploy the application, but we cannot start the application because the server is down. So if you want to start the application, if you want, I am trying to start the application. Let's see. It will throw an error. See, the server 2 node local 1 contains not be started. So it will throw an error. There is no impact on deployment. So deployment is success because after that only we can see the deployment file from this list. Okay, so deployment is success, but the server has been not started. So if you start the server 2, server 3 and server 4, then we can able to start this application. Okay, now try to start the application servers from the console. I'm starting 3 servers at a time. Let's see. Let me start one server first because it is taking time. Actually, this is recommended way. Stop the services and then do the deployment. Anyway, we have taken the downtime and approval from the stockholders.
Right.
Then we can do whatever we want. In that schedule, we can do whatever.
So we don't have to stop the cluster. We can stop the servers. Or if we stop the cluster also, it will stop all the servers. It's the same, right?
All the things. Both are same. Now server 2 is running. Now try to start the application. Let's see. So it is showing like server 2, node 2. For the more information, see the log files because we have to restart the environment, like restart node agent and try to start the services once again, because sometimes it will not sync with the DMGR. So if you do stop and start of the node agent get the information, then it will be okay.
So for the node agent, when we start, we always have to give the user ID and password? Or
If you enable security, we have to give. I have enabled security for this
server.
environment. So for starting, it will not ask. For stopping all the services, from whatever the services we are stopping from the Unix console, it will ask.
Oh, okay.
So for server 2 is different error, server 3 is different error. So for server 3 is not started. That's why it is showing it has been started. It not has been started. And for server 2 it is started, but application is not able to start because we have to restart the environment. So we can see all the errors here itself. Or we can see the logs also. No need to go for logs. Everything will be here only. We can find out and we can troubleshoot. So node agent is started. Let me start server 2 and server 3, server 4 also. I'm starting all. So go to the application and start. So application is started. Okay, so we did the deployment, but the cluster is down that time, and we started the cluster and we started the application also. So this is recommended way in production environment in real time. For non-production, we can do whatever. So there is no downtime also non-production. So we can do deployments and deployments while the servers clusters are up and running. So is it Raju?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
fine. So I'm stopping here.
Okay.
Tomorrow. Yeah, I can hear you. I can
Yeah.
hear you. So is it clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will come with the new topic tomorrow. I'm stopping here. So thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.